What's going on, everybody? This is On the Fence, and we are on episode 5. This is Garrett Schexnayder.
This is Big Don, a.k.a. Joe Goldberg.
And today we're going to take a more serious approach and talk about something that's, kind of blew up on the internet over the last few days. And that's the dealings going on with Iran. I know a lot of people are concerned. A lot of people are very invested and involved in everything that's been going on. I know a few of you have reached out to me, and I'm assuming many have reached out to you, Don, on kind of our feelings on the situation. It's this isn't anything to do with a current presidential administration. I personally believe that this goes back, almost to the foundations of America, and when we began, our imperialistic approach to how we handle foreign affairs.
Yeah. Facts.
So what has happened? There's been constant instability in the region, despite, intervening from several other nations over several decades, if not centuries. But more recently, a Pentagon contractor got killed by Hezbollah a few days ago. And Hezbollah, for those of you who don't know, is, a militia that is, it's a very heavy terrorist supporting militia. So the United States responded with airstrikes on Hezbollah positions near Syria. And then that is what led to the storming of the embassy in Baghdad, Iraq. Although the embassy was stormed, nobody actually got into the entrance of the embassy building itself. I don't believe anybody was killed or that's been reported on. And in response, President Trump chose to deliver an airstrike to a Baghdad airport, which is where General Qasem Soleimani was killed. And that was, ordered as a direct action of the president. In response to this, I don't think that President Trump is to blame or that he did anything unnecessary or that any other president would have refused to do. And he may have prevented another Benghazi-type attack on a embassy in a foreign nation. What do you think?
I can actually see on that one and raise it to another. I actually had a friend of mine bring up a point that, to my understanding, he got the intel when he made the call. If you remember, pre 9/11, Bush and Cheney actually sat on intel, didn't do anything, and 9/11 happened. So the precedent is there, in terms of acting quickly as soon as you find something out. My whole deal is as long as we can prevent going to a war, because my outlooks on war are always been, it started by old men, but it's paid for by young men. And regardless if it's, American, Iranian, or any nation, I don't want people having to send off their sons and daughters to go die for something that some old guys in the room can't agree on. I don't fault Trump for doing what he did. He was in a lose-lose. He had to respond. The fallout from it is crappy, to say the least, because if we go to war tomorrow, it look like we're going to be by ourselves with no allies. Iran just backed out the deal, the nuclear deal, apparently. And then I've been seeing articles talking about China and Russia been doing naval drills with Iran. So it's a tough call, man, because especially 2020, this would literally be like the first major skirmish in the technological, the tech age. So not only do we have to worry about foot soldiers, we got to worry about drones and airstrikes and everything else. So it's like I said, man, I hope diplomacy wins in this situation. But ultimately, I say all that to say I don't fault what the current administration did in regards. They had to act quickly.
Yeah, I agree. And there's a divide between, I would say there's a three-way divide kind of on how you're viewing this. I know a lot of people to the left are saying that this was an act of war and it was an assassination. People on the right are saying that, this was just an attack on another terrorist organization. And then you have those in the middle who don't know or aren't sure how to feel about this. And I'm not going to persuade anybody how to feel. I encourage you all to do your research on this. My belief is that, as soon as, supporters and protesters stormed the embassy, it very much could have led to another Benghazi situation. And I don't want that. I don't think you do either. And there's also, another three-way division between what do we do in the Middle East. There are those of us who want to leave immediately. There are those who believe we should have, some presence there as a deterrence to further military action from Iran. And again, there's always going to be those who don't know how to feel or what to do. And to those, I encourage research.
Yeah.
As far as killing Soleimani himself, I don't blink an eye at it. This man is responsible for hundreds, if not thousands, of American troops dying, and even more Iraqis than that.
Yeah.
He was the commander of the Quds Force, which was in '07 designated by the United States as a supporter of terrorism. So if you use that, then this was just another hit on, a high-ranking terrorist individual.
Yeah.
Now, he was the general of an Iranian force, so you could view it as that way. I think that he is the commander of, a terrorist organization is a little bit more in line with what Trump thinks. Like I said, I would think most people there agree that, by him dying is not a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
The world's probably a better place without him.
Yeah.
But there was a tweet by an actress, not long ago saying that, we're sorry for killing him and that, this isn't our war. And I think that's cowardice. I don't think it's right. I think the man deserved to die.
Well, there's a lot of schools of thought on the reasoning. I seen another report where I don't know if it was in Iran or somewhere else over in that region. There may or may not have been a new oil field found, so there's people looking at it that way. There's other people who feel that Trump is trying to go to war to ensure that he don't get removed from office because of the impeachment. There's another school of thought that feels he wants to go and be in wartime because the sitting president apparently doesn't get removed during wartime. So those are just several schools of thought that's going on as far as a conspiracy theory type of vibe. But to my understanding, the way it was explained to me is Soleimani's basically like a real life Darth Vader, and we had to get him up out of there.
Well, yeah, he's probably the greatest military influencer of Iran.
Yeah.
As far as I have heard that they found more oil there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that would have propelled this situation or not. It's very possible that it could have. Although I don't think that I buy into the theory that he wants to not be removed from office. Even with impeachment occurring, him and anybody would be able to tell you that it's not going to go through the Senate,
Oh, no, the removal process still has to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they'll still have the trials and all, but
Yeah.
I don't see Trump doing anything to delay that because the sooner it goes to the Senate, the sooner.
And even without the impeachment, there's some people that just felt like he was just trying to bypass the 2020 election and just be an option. Just the people.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, people are right to be cynical of any politician.
Oh, absolutely.
But it's just I didn't think it was that deep. I just think the main complaint I've always had with Trump is I just always found him extremely sophomoric. Like that's like this. I prefer my commander in chief to be a little bit more mature.
Oh, I agree, and his unprofessionalism has probably been one of the things that I've critiqued the most as well.
Yeah.
Because we can sit and talk about bad and good policy all day long, and you can do it as professionals. As me and you have done it before.
Yeah.
I would also like the most powerful leader in the known world to, or the first world, I guess, but to act a little more humbly, I guess.
Yeah. It's because the thing is, it's like I've never had to worry about a president inciting an international war on Twitter.
Yeah.
Like that's like just tact. I feel like the last 3.5 years could have gone a whole lot more smoothly if he was just more tactful. Like, I jokingly compared Donald Trump to Kanye West. You know what I'm saying? I literally told, matter of fact, when I was still in the education system, I literally told one of my classes, if Kanye West ran for president, it would be just like voting for Donald Trump. Because essentially they both have the same mannerisms. They say the same stuff. You never know what you're going to get. And that kind of, like, lie to me if you're going to, you know what I'm saying? I'm old fashioned. I like mine to, just lie to me, do some embezzling on the side that I don't know about, have some secret affairs, JFK.
Yeah. I mean, in all seriousness, I don't put anything past our government to get involved in anything. But jokingly, I heard that Soleimani had dirt that would lead to the arrest of Hillary Clinton.
I don't even know who. You talking about former First Lady Hillary?
Is that who that is?
Yeah, we're part of the Obama administration. We say dirt like for a garden. That's what we talking about.
Soil.
Yeah, soil. That dirt.
Well, he is soil right now.
Drum roll.
Yeah. But, I mean, this guy is, he's killed over 600 U.S. soldiers in Iraq. And they're saying he led, even more terrorist organizations that went into Afghanistan. And, and Hezbollah has supposedly fought against ISIS. But it's, if you followed anything that's happened in the Middle East in the last 20 years, it's that when we get involved and cut the head off of a serpent, it doesn't tend to go well. ISIS replaced Saddam Hussein.
That's actually,
ISIS was worse.
I was just about to ask you how you feel about the new potential power play, because when you remove the bully, everybody else starts fighting for the same block. So
it's a weird thing because it seems like anytime we get involved or in any conflict we've done after World War II, we've stayed. I mean, we stayed in Germany. We still have military there, but when Obama was president, he chose to withdraw out of Iraq. And he did it fairly immediately, and the whole place just got overrun.
Yeah.
So you can look at this as, we get troops out of there, and everything we did is just going to go to crap.
Yeah.
Or you can say, we can keep troops there, but you're always going to run the risk of having these soldiers die, which I also don't like.
Yeah.
While keeping troops there, that you have some kind of physical deterrence to, attacks that might lead over here. The solution was to never get involved in the first place.
Yep.
We've backed Saudi Arabia while Russia usually backs Iran, and that's kind of where things get iffy. Russia and China. But as far as, Trump authorizing the strike to kill him and some other high-ranking officials, after you led the attack on the embassy, you kind of forced his hand.
Yeah.
Because we all saw the outrage that Obama got when he didn't intervene in Benghazi.
Yeah. There's actually a school of thought that's out there that thinks they made that move because of the impeachment. They felt like, okay, they may not have a leader, so let's try to make a play. So like I said, it just, whether that's plausible or not, like I said, just the internet's done two things: crack a whole bunch of jokes and throw out a whole bunch of theories. So I just kind of been sitting back observing both sides.
It's also, the internet has this way of exaggerating everything that goes on.
Yeah.
I don't think we're on the brink of a world war, not by any means. I think the most you'll get is China might financially back Iran in certain decisions that they would make. But as far as actual repercussions to what's going on, we've already seen two of them. The Iraqi parliament has passed a resolution that calls for the expulsion of every U.S. troop in the nation, which could be articulated out if you wanted to go that way. I don't think Trump is going to be the kind of leader who's like, well, we're just going to leave, especially with the instability in the region right now. Because he knows if we leave and everything in Iran overruns Iraq, well, we just lost everything that we've worked towards since 2003.
Yeah.
And I said before, the solution was never getting involved in Iraq in the first place.
Right.
With 9/11, there was a reason to go to Afghanistan. And even then, we failed them when we decided we're going to overthrow their leaders and implement our own democracy. Not our democracy, but a democracy.
Sense, yeah, it was supposed to have been the search for WODs.
Yeah, well, that was Iraq, yeah.
Yeah. And then after that, we're going to go get Osama in the caves. But with those two situations, people feel like Bush was just trying to get some oil for his company. Like, it just, not saying it's true, not saying it's not
Yeah,
true. It just,
I mean,
the Middle East, it's going to always be a dicey situation when America intervenes.
That's one of those things where very brilliant people have brought that up, and they make good points. And it's always hard to tell what the reasoning is. I mean, we've gone through 2 world wars over lies,
Right.
World War II was started over a lie. Like, we purposely did that.
Yeah.
But, yeah, so the Iraqi parliament chose that they want to expel all U.S. troops from the country. And then I think it was either today or late last night, Iran withdrew from the nuclear deal, which is the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. And essentially what that does is keep a limit on the amount of uranium and nuclear material that they were allowed to have, and sets a limit to the research that they could do. Being that they withdrew from that agreement, there are no limits on any of that. So potentially they can restart a nuclear program, and it could get stronger. If that happens, I mean, it's not a good thing.
Right.
At the same time, you can't force someone into an agreement necessarily. And then Iran has already promised retaliation against the airstrike. We can take care of Iran military, in a military manner. I want to say when we invaded Iraq, it had the 3rd largest military in the world, and we toppled it in 3 weeks, which is crazy, but it happened.
And about the retaliation piece, there's something else flying around that's been apparently. There's another rumor going out that Iran has put $80 million on Trump's head.
Yeah, I saw the article. I haven't read it yet.
Yeah.
Terrorist organizations put bounties on several people a lot of times. I don't know who actually put the bounty out, if there is one.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but I did see the article. Something that actually worries me a little bit more is China is Iran's largest export of oil.
Yeah.
So China is very economically involved with Iran. So I don't know if they would be hesitant to support them financially through an armed conflict. I don't think that they would physically support them, but that's always a possibility.
They do it physically. They concern me because of the numbers that they have in
Yeah.
the standard military.
And nobody wants a war of attrition where you're just sending people out, and whoever has the most people, So, yeah, I mean, people are right to be concerned about that, and I would urge anybody to keep their eye on this situation. But there's a lot of division over this whole situation, and we've talked a little bit about it. Many people think this was an act of war by Donald Trump, that it wasn't approved by Congress, so this is, unconstitutional. I don't personally see it that way. I see this as him, finding a terrorist leader, and he basically, took him out. Under the Obama administration, they bombed a wedding that had very low-ranking insurgents, and nobody batted an eye.
Yeah.
It was a wedding, 10 women, multiple children, and nobody batted an eye at that.
Yeah.
If you're gonna be, if you're gonna be critical of one president doing this, you got to do it.
Yeah. Across the board.
Across the board. I joined the Army when I was 18. And I still would have known what I know today, but I'm trying to think where I was going with this. Don't switch your position based on whichever political party is in charge. I'm very anti-war. There's a quote saying, "I hate war as only someone who's seen it can." I don't want young Americans sent overseas and dying for nothing. If it were a threat to our democracy, that'd be one thing. I don't necessarily know that this is, which is not to say that it can't be, a deterrence for something that would be.
Right.
So I didn't like when Obama was, droning men, women, and kids. I don't like Trump's done it, you know.
Yeah, yeah,
And my solution would be to get out of the Middle East. It's not worth the lives that we've given up. And it sucks because I know that as someone who's lost friends there, that when we leave, it's going to be all for nothing anyway. At the same time, nobody else has been able to settle this area, this region of the world.
it's been like that since the beginning of time.
Absolutely.
At its core, it's tribes fighting for a small piece of land.
Oh, that's absolutely what it is. And it goes back past the Crusades.
It's biblical era.
Yeah. There is an argument to be made that, if we leave this region, then Russia, China, and North Korea can all operate out of this, being such strong allies of Iran. And there's a little bit of the same thing can be said about Saudi Arabia and the United States.
If we leave, like, what I'm saying, like what Israel's response would be, what I'm saying.
Yeah, if we left the Middle East, we'd leave Israel, and that's a strong ally of ours.
Yeah.
I think what you could do is possibly come up with an alliance between Saudi Arabia and the Kurdish areas, which Trump has kind of made them mad. And he's all about bringing the troops home, or so he says, but you got to do it strategically, and you got to know where you can stay and where you shouldn't go. And these lines are very hard to find.
Yeah.
Yeah, set up bases and strongholds on more, U.S. allied, forces.
Yeah.
That way, you're still in the region, but you're not wasting lives in these, areas.
Right.
And then, if we can fall back every so often without having a threat occur, then maybe that could work.
I wonder what they'll do for private contractors.
Well,
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because it's like that's some people's livelihood. So it's like
Yeah.
so if you drop down the amount of places in the Middle East, there's less places that
Yeah.
these
Well-
private contractors can go.
war is a money-making machine,
Yeah.
and that's the problem. That's why people are so accustomed to doing it. A lot of people get rich off of wartime activities.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, but going over all these things, I personally don't know what the right thing would be. I have my ideas and my thoughts. So, what about you? Do you think we should leave the area altogether? Do you think staying there is an act of deterrence of war? Or?
Well, it's the reason why they have that saying, "Don't never start something that you can't finish or keep up."
Yeah.
Because I have the George Washington mindset of stay out of foreign affairs.
Yeah. I do too.
But because America is basically the world's regulator, you know what I'm saying? So it's like because we've extended ourselves in all these different places, you have to have some type of presence over there.
Yeah, I said earlier that, we failed when we began becoming imperialistic.
Yeah.
It worked in most places, but as soon as you got to the Middle East in such an unsteady region,
Yeah, no, that's the one area that just should have never been touched, and would be like, hey, whatever y'all do over there, just don't mess with anybody else.
with that said, how do you feel about the Israeli situation?
And which part?
Well, we're very strong allies of Israel.
Like if we leave, and well, that's the part that sucks is if you leave, Israel's by themselves. So you
Yeah.
you literally at a point where like you have to stay. Same thing with Saudi Arabia.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Like Russia and China are two gigantic threats if they ever just wanted to just do anything.
Mm-hmm.
And they're both right next door to the Middle East. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like, because it's right there. Like Middle East is in Africa and in Asia, so it's
Yeah.
like it's a hub. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So it's basically be like leaving your little brother
Yeah,
in a
yeah.
deer stand with no rope or ladder to get down.
Mm-hmm.
So we kind of have to stay now, and it's pretty much going to be like that for as long as this particular era of human civilization is up and running.
Yeah.
We'll have to stay over there.
It seems to me like the best thing to do would be to get strongholds and military bases in Saudi Arabia and the Kurdish territories, and then I would even put some in Israel, and put maybe station some naval ships around that area.
I would, and keep training them, you know, make sure they got the latest tech, not as good
Yeah.
as ours,
Yeah.
maybe like a gen or two back. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Don't have Afghanistan 2.0 where
Yeah.
we're basically fighting a group, you know what I'm saying, that's using our old stuff 40 years from now. But like I said, it's just that's the one thing that sucks is America's basically is the world police, to quote a very old
Oh, absolutely.
movie, you know.
So there were a couple posts shared. If you start hearing the vibration, let me know. But there were a couple posts shared. I took screenshots of them because it essentially does what a lot of people politically do, and it's dehumanize their political opponents.
Yeah.
So one was, if you're upset that the USA killed a terrorist who killed U.S. soldiers, you need to turn in your citizen card. You are an idiot. And the problem I have with that is that people on the opposing side of conservatives aren't critiquing that they killed a terrorist. They're saying that they killed a military general, which is an act of war. That's not an easy argument to just push aside. You know what I mean? And I feel like a lot of your neocons, your neoconservatives have developed this attitude towards Trump like, oh, well, whatever he does is good. Like, it's important now, especially now that, conservatives are very critical of Trump, who is not a traditionally conservative president. He's a New York City Democrat. He has been his whole life. And I think it shows in a lot of his policies. And there was another post quite like that, and I was like, you guys are dehumanizing something that you're not understanding the full concept of, right? Like, you can't tell me when, the bill was passed under the Reagan administration that allowed for the president to use military action.
Right. But we're at a point now where people aren't supporters anymore, they're fans, and you're not supposed to be fans of somebody's that's holding a public office.
Oh, I agree completely.
So people will ride or die with who's ever on their quote unquote side. There's too many people that's voting for a color or a party, not necessarily, policy or what works best for them.
Oh, I can guarantee you it. I don't want to say half, but a good portion of the Trump supporters on my news feed weren't politically involved before he got into office.
Yeah.
Which, I guess everybody gets involved at a certain point when it starts affecting you, but I got involved politically when the Obama administration was in, and it wasn't due to my hatred of, his views or policies. It was just, I had joined the military under his presidency, and it became important to me. Every decision made was on me.
Right.
Which is why his decision in Benghazi upset me.
Yeah.
I would have gladly went, and almost everybody in my unit would have gladly went to help prevent that.
Yeah, no, I see. With me, I came from a family where like we talked about voting, how important it was. My great grandmother on my maternal great grandmother was actually cousins with Thurgood Marshall. So like I just come from a family that's gonna like talk it out loud, try to be as well versed as possible. You know what I mean, and go make the best decision possible. That's another thing I hate. I still hate the fact that we're on a two-party system. It's one thing to have committees, on Capitol Hill, but there's no rhyme or reason why we should have two people run, or three, or 1,000, however you want to do it.
Yeah.
And just like Louisiana does a beautiful job of that with the open primary, and we siphon it off to the final 2 or 3, and we have another election.
Yeah.
Our national elections should be the same way, because now it's it's diplomatic gang warfare. Republicans, Democrats, Green Tea Party, Libertarian, Independent, neo this, old that. I'm just like, no, it shouldn't be about the party. It should be about the constituents getting what they need out of their public servants. Like, we forget they serve us. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Right.
They are basically public servants the same way a first responder or a teacher is. You know what I'm saying? They're well paid. You know what I mean? Be it through their public salary or somebody coming in under the table. You know what I'm saying? So, and that's another thing. You know what I'm saying? Hey, let's get some of these lobbyists and big time companies to be like, hey, it's okay to take care of us too while you're trying to get your stuff in. You know what I'm saying? Somebody has to work for you. Somebody has to buy you stuff. So that's the everything we're seeing with this administration. it's basically a lot of things coming to a head, and I hope it resolves starting in 2020 on forward.
I agree. I think this political discourse that we're in has, spun out of control.
Yeah.
And this Iranian situation is a perfect example of that. I don't think there's many Democrats who would say, who wouldn't view what they're being told by Democrats in charge, and same thing for the Republicans.
Right.
Neither side is willing to admit that there is either an in between, and this isn't everybody. I would assume most people are somewhere in that middle 50%.
Yeah.
And I just learned what horseshoe theory was. You know what that is?
Mm-mm.
So horseshoe theory, you know how a political spectrum is just a line, and it goes to the far right, to the far left.
Yeah.
So what horseshoe theory does is starts with your centrist,
Okay.
and then it forms a horseshoe, and at the bottom you have your far left and your far right, but they get close together because they're both closer to authoritarianism and fascism and things like that.
Yeah. Because they're both extremists at the end of the day. Once
Exactly.
you get that far. Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes perfect
And
sense.
the voices that are on the news constantly are getting further and further to the bottom of that horseshoe.
CNN and Fox News.
Yeah, exactly. And I would have said before Trump's presidency that CNN was more reliable, and they butchered that.
Yeah.
I feel like Jim Acosta and everybody else at CNN has lost their minds.
Yeah. Same thing with the Young Turks.
Oh, don't even. I can't stand
And,
the Young Turks.
To an extent, I guess Ben Shapiro.
I still feel like he's a lot more centrist than most. Not centrist. He definitely has his conservative bias. But I still consider him like he's not a news outlet. Like he gives you his thoughts, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Whereas Young Turks and CNN and Fox, those are news outlets. Ben Shapiro runs his own show, and he gives you his own ideas.
Yeah. News is more opinion ed these days.
I also like Ben Shapiro. So
Yeah. No. News is more opinion ed based.
yeah,
And which is crazy because like you look at a guy like Walter Cronkite. He didn't really start doing op-eds until like the back end of his career. You know what I'm saying? Before that, it was just here's some facts. I'm gonna read it, and good night.
yeah.
I feel like we got to get back to that. You know what I mean? Like it's cool if you want to have a platform where people trade ideas, thoughts, and viewpoints, and have a debate. But
I think we have to get back to that.
the news can't be opinion based. You know what I'm saying? It has to just be fact based. You know what I mean?
I agree. And there's listening to Joe Rogan, there's hard truth and facts, and there's objective truth, right?
Mm-hmm.
And politics is run on objective truth,
Yeah.
almost constantly.
Yeah.
Which is why the liberal versus conservative debate is as hard as it is, because a conservative can give you all real facts, but then at the same time, a Democrat can do the same thing, and you'd be conflated as to choose which one.
You can take the same set of numbers and skew it for your argument.
Exactly.
I've done it to people before just to troll them. You know what I mean, on the back end, so, yeah.
I mean, you see it in sports all the time.
Yeah.
Who's the greatest quarterback of all time? Tom Brady's got 6 rings. Peyton Manning has he had the touchdowns. I think both Breeze and Brady passed him up, but
Yeah.
I mean, it's things like that kind of run its course. But a lot of people grow up and are told, don't talk about religion, don't talk about politics, and I think that's the biggest mistake anybody can make.
Yeah.
I think that's when you get into situations like this, because you were scared to talk how you feel with somebody else. And if you're scared to talk about it, that means you're scared you can't learn. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I've always said that that saying was a mistake. People should have been taught to talk about politics and religion without the emotion, and to realize that this person may not agree with you, may not ever agree with you, may think you're a bona fide idiot, but that's okay. Like there's no reason for voices to escalate, for punches and kicks to be exchanged. So if we can ever get to a point to where we can have a civil conversation and converse about any and everything without the emotion, that will go a long way. You know what I mean? Because it's infiltrated into our media, it's infiltrated into our politics, and now it's pretty much just a part of our general pop culture. Everybody be getting pissed off at somebody that has a different thought of opinion or viewpoint.
Yeah. Well, That was a fun podcast.
That it was.
With all hopes and prayers, hopefully this doesn't escalate any further than it needs to.
Yeah.
Going on the second part of our podcast, I really hope that people can begin, indulging in discussions and, debates with people who don't agree with them without insulting their character.
Right.
It's childish, it's immature, and it's unprofessional. But I think if we can get back to all that, then, discussions like this are what we need.
Yep, exactly. No.
All right, well, that was episode 5. Thank you, guys.